Hello.
Uh-oh? What happened? We have an uh-oh.
We have an uh-oh.
We have an oopsie.
No.
The phone went night-night. The camera went night-night.
Uh-oh.
Died?
That's a big uh-oh.
Not plugged in.
Oh, no. Whoa!
Full setup, go bam bam. Woo! We had an explosion in the studio. Not a literal one.
Thankfully.
Someone, I'm not going to throw shade, forgot to plug in one of our cameras.
Uh-oh. I guess I'm saying sit down.
All right, guys.
Okay, give me Kyle's view.
Oh, no.
No.
Perfect. Okay. Your view is perfect.
Perfect. I'm perfect.
Top view is dead.
Top view is working on it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Launch it. I'll
We
get
are-
this fixed by the time the video's done.
Heck yeah. All right, Taylor.
All right. You want to just start?
Yeah. We're just going to go for it while we're working on technical difficulties.
Well done.
Do you want to put us up on... Yeah, okay.
Welcome to the podcast from Duendelvin. I'm Taylor, and this...
You got this.
Sorry, I'm really distracted from the technical difficulties.
Go for it.
All right. Hi. Hello, welcome to From Duendelvin. And in this podcast, we will be exploring the world of Savarion. Here we have Kyle.
And Jeff's over
Jeff is on tech support.
there.
He'll be here soon.
Minor stutter. Major minor. Minor major.
And today, we'll be discussing Garthia.
We're back. Woo! Yeah.
All right, I think we got it.
Handled it.
All right.
Okay, how about now?
You went like
Wow. I
full
know.
red zone.
My bad.
Is that
I think we're
everything?
back. Booyah. Nailed it.
Alrighty. Well, since we'll be talking about Garthia, what are we talking about today? Since there was no other implication in the title.
That's fair. We didn't talk about anything, and I don't think we've mentioned it maybe once or twice in previous episodes about what Garthia is. So, in our previous episodes, we've talked about there was this big event called the Affirmation, where these 4 beings brought a bunch of people together and said, look, you call us gods or else. And they was like, oh, okie dokie. And that happened at what is now the center of the world, Garthia. It is the literal city capital of the world
Yes.
after the Affirmation.
So, well, and it's where the affirmation happened. So,
Yes.
the Horkai come down. They say their piece, treat us like gods, yada yada yada. There's a bunch of people who said no, a bunch of people who were like yes. They decimated all these armies, left these holes in the area between, so that the underworld could occasionally get up and stuff like that.
They pop up and create havoc.
We can talk about how that all works at another time, because today it's Garthia. So the council that like met to say, okay, we need to honor the Horkai as gods because they are the gods, met in what is Garthia now.
Yes.
Okay. And so this plot of land, and I have like a really rough drawing. I don't know if I could show it or not. Would it even make sense for me?
It wouldn't
like,
make
put it in
sense to
front of
show
the
it. We'll be okay.
Yeah. No.
You
Okay,
don't
so it ends up looking like an eyeball, but basically like where the center of this city is where they met, and then they decided, okay, we're going to honor the Horkai as gods. And they create from that moment, right? They create the 5 different organizations that run and own and operate Garthia. Okay, and so you have the
Vassal
Okay.
which would be the
Yep.
church.
The Vassal is the church, and then you have because I'm just going to read what you wrote.
Oh,
is that
man.
okay?
Yeah, we can read what I wrote. This is going to be
The
fun.
creation. Okay. So affirmed godhoods began construction of the 4 pillars of the Herculean faith, which we will talk about at another time.
Joe Schmo.
Yo, what's up, Gib?
What's up, Gib?
Okay.
Hey. Okay, so we will talk about the tenets of faith, like how people do faith,
Yeah.
another time. But we will. So the high priests were chosen to lead the people to honor and fear the Horkai. That became the Vassal. the urgent need to spread knowledge to the other places, the other continents. So pre-affirmation, it was all Pangea. After the decimation of the armies happened,
There was the breaking.
The world broke apart and became continents, right? The breaking. And so now there's a need to travel to other continents to talk to people, and no one had ever sailed before. So so they had to figure that out. Creation.
Just a quick thing. Gib asked if Garthia is a person or a place.
It's a place.
City.
Garthia is a place.
It's
a city
city.
nation. It's a walled nation that has 20 cities inside of it.
I mean, for reference, we did the math on when we built this thing. It is effectively the length from Denver to Kansas City.
Yes. In width, but it's
yeah.
the shape of an eyeball.
Yes.
So it's not as tall as it is long, but it's about looks like an eyeball, but if you went from the point to the point, it would Denver to Kansas City. That's how big this nation state is. So, okay. Urgent need to spread this knowledge to others led to the creation of a device that would allow the dwarves to accurately predict changes in the weather.
Effectively, yeah. It's like a city. So Joshmo asked if like a city state but large, but yeah, it's a massive collection of smaller cities that becomes the whole. We'll talk about this more as it goes on. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and so that's what we're talking about now. Jeff is reading out the creation of the entities.
Okay, so a device that requires you to read it in order to predict changes in the weather on the ocean. To read it was immensely complicated, and so the dwarves kept it for themselves and created the Dwarven Pirates. So basically, the Dwarven Pirates are in charge of the oceans, and they become the only ones that can sail, but then after that, they start protecting the waters and like killing everybody else who tries. So they facilitate both the spread of information, the ability to cross the waters, and the protection of like them being the only ones that can do it. So
okay.
yes,
I mean, it just watches over everybody. I don't understand. It's just giant eyeball. It's not an eldritch thing by any means.
Not this time.
No, this one is definitely not an eldritch thing. It's just
not an eldritch thing.
The shape of the land dictated the shape of the city.
Yeah. And it really did. Like the shape of the land existed before the city. Like when it was originally drawn, it did. So it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so the halflings worked with the muskeperts and humans to develop roadways that were resilient to the volatile nature of the weather, creating roads and connecting people together, allowing faster and safer travel across a continent, and then that allows to spread the knowledge of the Horakai as well. That created two separate groups. One of them was the halfling caravanners, and these were the people who went with you to protect you along the roads, because just because the roads handled the environment doesn't mean that things aren't still going to try to kill you. It also created a separate organization also run by the halflings called the Halfling Police. And they were essentially the police force of the world for the first couple hundred years. They fall into a little bit of an obscurity later on, but they're initially the police force of the world.
Oh yeah, we got some good questions here. The landscape inside of Garthia is actually more like it's really diverse because it's massive. It has like some hilly, mountainous areas. It has some plains areas. It has access to the coast. And then as far as the weather goes, because of the ridiculous amount of magic being utilized during the fall, which is actually where our board game takes place, and then again the excessive use of power by the Horakai, weather doesn't weather like it should weather anymore. It is absolutely ridiculous. You can be living in springtime sunshine, and then within 5 minutes you are now in a blizzard. Good luck. Don't die. So sad.
There's only one continent on the entire planet that still has regulated, and it's the furthest south, and it's the only place where you can actually like effectively farm.
It's called Wabi.
It's called Wabi. So which is the farmers union. So and then the weather, the weather is erratic and crazy. Because the eye shape, does that mean the landscape looks like that?
He's asking if, like, the land looks like an eye, or if, like, it's raised like an eye, so...
No, so, like...
we'll have to release...
Yeah, we'll show you the
right now,
really
it
rude map.
legitimately is a rudimentary map that, like, I drew with a pencil and then put on like
Scanned it into the computer.
yeah, scanned it into the computer and did it like colored it on paint. So it's
You don't get to retract your messages. Get out of here. I'm just kidding. You obviously can.
I mean oh yeah, yes. It looks like an eyeball on the map.
Yep.
I'll find that
So-
message you retracted.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
all right.
It looks like so the city ends up just being shaped like an eye. It has to
Well,
do with
the top
geographical
of
positioning.
the continent has that rounded edge on it, and then we just rounded the other edge to create the eyeball, because the whole continent, it's like this huge, it almost looks like a cross.
And it's like on a peninsula of the continent.
Yeah, it's on a the top peninsula of the continent. So
See? Yep. You don't need to retract that. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
okay, where were we?
All
Halfling
right.
police. Okay, the goblins, understanding that trade would now become a necessary part of the world, as we could no longer regulate the value of goods and services through negotiation, introduced currency to the world. Goblins had currency, their own, and then post-affirmation, they're like, the whole world's going to use it now. So they keep track of that. They also... providing and keeping track of coins that were in circulation, carefully safeguarding against inflammatory practices that could disrupt the flow of goods and services. As such, they created a average day's wage is 5 solid essence, is what it's called. And solid essence is the name of
The currency.
the currency here. They would also be the ones that regulated quality of goods. So when you you got a stamp of approval from Garthia on the quality of your goods, it would be a rating system from 1 to 5. And only people in Garthia actually could even earn a rating of 1. Anybody outside of that, you couldn't. But they would maintain the rating scale as well for quality and control. And that was the Traders Guild.
What? You mean greedy goblins want to control things?
What?
Wow.
Okay, so we have the caravanners, and
I
then
think that's all 5.
Yeah, that's the 5 that ruled. And then the leader of each of those 5 factions governed Garthia.
Yep.
And
They're
then
like the major authorities, but then each city, each has a representative, a governor, that they then speak for their people in council to the 5.
yes, and there are 19.
There's
There are
20.
20 cities, but the capital of the capital. So the capital city in Garthia is where the Vassilark live, and so they don't have their own representative. All the other cities have a representative, except the
Affirma,
which is the name of the capital.
It's also where you go to
City.
worship
Yes.
aggressively.
Yeah.
So yeah, Affirma doesn't get to have a representative, and the reason we kind of worked with that one is because then there's an even number of representatives, and if there's ever a tie that needs to be broken, the actual war leader, the general, or one of his representatives will be that tiebreaker. But other than that, they don't participate in the council as a member at all
Right.
until a tie is needed to be called.
They appear
Yep.
so they can hear what's going on, but they don't.
They don't actually have a
Yeah.
they stay out of it for the most part, and then it's kind of cool. The Garthia understood the value of having one solid leader, so if Garthia ever had to go to war, then the general takes a supreme command over the city and activates it as a war engine, and it starts churning out crazy amounts of we going to battle today.
And Garthia has the largest standing army in the world, at every point.
Yep.
So they have the first standing army, and then they maintain the largest standing army forever. So, and when we go through the cities, we're going to talk about the cities and what they do today. When we go through that, we're going to give the population at like the height-ish.
Are we doing that today, or are we going to do that later? Because we still have to talk about how Garthia formed. Like, we talked a little bit about like the history of it and the different factions, but we didn't actually talk about what the world was like when Garthia tried to start building itself.
I guess we'll
How do we
just
want-
see what happens.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear. I like this.
Eventually, we will talk about the
Both of
size
these
of
things are going to get covered.
all of those things. Yeah, but we don't actually have an event where Garthia ever goes to war.
Nope, because no one's
The-
stupid enough to do it.
The only time Garthia would go to war after the age of, or during the age of the godless, when Duendelvin's taking over everything.
Yep.
That would be the only time that Garthia actually marshals its army for war. So
Both there. So ask the question, Tay. Sorry, that's my bad.
All right. Joe asked, are they strong in numbers or are they just strong?
The answer is yes. They have the best equipment. They have the strongest capability. They have the largest amount of people. There are other. We actually they have 4 other nations, I believe. Am I right on this? 4 other empires.
well, there's 5
empires. Yeah.
total, but one of them goes away pretty quick.
Yeah. Actually, the tram system that Garthia totes and utilizes actually came from that fallen empire. They took in refugees from the Coalian Empire. We talked about that during our Secret Societies episode. The big dub for the Shadows Guild.
Yep.
This is supposed to be a W.
The W, the win for the Shadows.
And that's where the tram system that connects these cities together and makes them functional comes from. So yes, to answer the question, numbers-wise, absolutely. And equipment-wise, you're not touching this. The only thing that would have an edge on them equipment-wise would be the City of the Wise.
But they don't have the numbers.
They don't have the numbers. They rely solely on quality.
Yep.
It's the difference between like special forces and standing army.
And because inside of the walls of Garthia, you have the supply of food from there, food and water. You literally could not siege Garthia. It could close itself off from the rest of the world and exist by itself forever. And so to have all of those things combined is probably why it took Duendelvin to even try, because nobody would even bother. Like, what's the point of attacking Garthia?
But Duendelvin had god magic on her side, so she kind of says, "Hey,
so I do what I want."
And they're like, "No, we're the head of the world," and she's like, "Down."
Not even. So, all right. So yeah, that's. I think we covered how it came to be,
and then how it's governed. Yeah, we talked about that.
Governed.
All right. So, what's Garthia's importance with the gods, with the
Horakai, yeah.
Yeah, the Horakai.
So it is where one of the bigger things was, how do we worship you, was one of the things that was asked. We'll talk about the different individual tenets that are spread about by the different Horakai brothers. Each of them represent a different belief structure. Everyone is required to spend an entire month in worship to the Horakai every year, and some of them have to make that, like, you have to make the Mecca at some point in time. And the idea is you just have to come to Garthia in Affirma and worship at the Pantheon aggressively, while like it is like, show your fervent prayers, show your fervent like belief in us, or we gonna kill you. And so that's like the big thing as far as how Garthia's import is, as far as the religion. You have to make your Mecca.
Yeah. Not everybody travels every year.
Exactly.
But because of the way the Horakai operate, they're very follow us or we punish you mentality. And so they're wildly vindictive. Because the Horakai aren't actually gods.
Nope.
So they're wildly vindictive. And so there's this huge pull to be like, okay, we have to honor the gods. This is a big deal. So the whole world shuts down for the first month of the year. And like, nobody works, nobody does anything. Obviously you still have to eat and, basic stuff like that, but you plan ahead so that you have food ready to go. So all you have to do is cook it. You don't have to go to the market. You don't have to sell it and all that kind of stuff. They are frauds.
They absolutely are frauds.
Absolutely, they're frauds.
We have a whole series on, I think it's the creation. No, not the creation. We have a series, I think, where we talk about how the Horakai come into power and initiate.
Yeah.
The Keepers of the Peace and the Horakai
Yep.
episode.
Yeah, we have episodes on that. So if you want to watch the specifics, we do have that. But yeah, they're frauds. But at this point, they've eradicated the people who know that, so nobody's aware that they're frauds, and they are dynamically powerful beings.
Yes. They were built to be the nuclear deterrent. So yeah, they're absolutely terrifyingly powerful.
So for like the whole month, the first month of the year, the whole world just shuts down and people will travel to Affirma. And Affirma has a population of about 1 million people that live there. During the festival season, that month, it would go to probably closer to 10 million people in the city for that month.
And for perspective, Garthia as a whole has roughly just about 10 million people in it that living in it in the different 20 cities. And Affirma skyrockets in to the whole population of an entire mass city.
Yeah. And maybe even more.
Month. It's possible it's even more.
I mean, Affirma is the most populated city in the world. And so when we say height and we're talking numbers, generally like you have the nations start and build, and then we almost have a couple thousand years of like the golden age where the amount of people in different areas doesn't fluctuate a whole lot. And so we're talking a good 2,000 years-ish that the populations would exist at something close to these numbers.
Yeah.
So to go from that, and that's the most densely populated city in the world, inside of the most densely populated nation state in the world, brings almost probably something like 50% of the world to Affirma.
Yep. Everybody come here for a little bit of time.
Right.
The only place that was built to handle that previous was Kungen.
Right.
And no one goes to Kungen right now. It's
No
a
one
scary
goes to
place.
Kungen.
Unless you got to commit your soul to the wall.
Right.
And I think, yeah.
Spooky.
Ian, I can't read that, just so you know.
Let's see. Joshimo asks, question, is Garthia mostly reliant on its cavalry, infantry, or naval power? Or even ranged capabilities?
It would be a mix of all.
Yeah, I was going to say again, yes.
So we have magic, an excess amount of magic for all sorts of cool capabilities. It's why you can feel these kind of populations as well. That also means you have magic made for war. We also have siege engines, which are your super long range. I'm just a mundane homeboy, and I'm going to kill you with this ballista catapult. Like, they also would be protected. So the seas, it would be very difficult for a nation to amass a navy because the Dwarven pirates would never allow it. You tried, they're going to crush you, and then they're going to punish you because you get your food supply on a regular basis from the nation of Wabi that is transported by the Dwarven pirates. So you break the Dwarven pirates' code of you don't sail the seas, and they're going to be like, hey, you broke it, now you don't eat.
Right, now you don't.
Bad kid, go to your room, no dinner for you.
So no on the Navy.
No on the Navy.
Because there is no Navy. Like, there is no naval warfare in our world.
There is it's small scale, low key naval warfare. People still
I don't know
try.
that it would still be called warfare.
Could be
It's like the Dwarven pirates own the waters.
And then you have
and
naval
anybody who tries
skirmishes.
dies.
Yeah.
Naval massacre.
We have rules in the role-playing game for the siege barge, which is literally just a giant ship that was built to hold a trebuchet so that it could sink ships from like a quarter mile away or something like that. It was just like, not a quarter mile, like miles away. Not quarter mile. Like, we're talking like distance.
Like long range. Yeah, long range.
Long range.
So, yeah.
But yeah.
Um,
So it's a mix of all of it. They would have cavalry. They'd actually have some of the most well-fed and terrifying mounted combatants in the world. Plus, we also have Minotaur, which are like mounted combatants on their own. They just hoof around and hit you with poles and make it nasty. Poles with pointy ends.
but you would have the Jordish and the
Jordish,
and
yep.
So we'll talk specifically about those creatures.
We haven't actually done our flora and fauna episodes about because we don't have horses. We have something similar to those, but all of our flora and fauna are unique to Savarion.
Yes. We've talked about allowing like real creatures in the world
And we just said
in
no,
the greater scheme of things, but we just figured we'd make them all up.
right?
So, and you can leave it there.
Joshmo says, Dwarven pirates just seem kind of weak. Like, why can't you just slowly but surely try to uproot their power and not have to worry about getting an angry ship of 3-foot tall men staring at?
They're 4 feet tall.
They're 4 foot tall. Our dwarves are unique, and it's the navigators that make them available to sail, because it's not just I'm going to build a ship and go out on the ocean. They discourage it aggressively because they want to protect other people from the ravages of the sea. It's not just this is my land. This don't touch my boats. I mean, eventually also becomes don't touch my boats, but it's it has to do with if they discourage people from trying to take that on because no one else has the mental capacity to operate the navigating machines that allow them to handle and prepare for the weather to sail in that, because weather makes for rough sailing. We're talking like we don't have steamboats, we don't have like electricity ships that can just power through that kind of stuff. And even if you have a map, you can't predict the currents that are going to shift based on the weather patterns. Because like we said, beautiful day for sailing one day, the next thing you know, you're in hurricane force winds. And if you don't have the navigator specifically to help you prepare for that, then you won't be able to ship out of the lane fast enough to get out of the way. And we don't have weather mages. That's a lost art that died, that the Horkai made sure to kill. They fully said, you know what? You made the weather like this. You don't get to control it. Stab, 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 stab.
I don't like you.
So it's definitely, it originally was designed that, like you said, we want to make sure that people are safe crossing the waters. That was where it began. And then it evolved or devolved.
Devolved is more accurate.
Into, because we can control this and not let anybody else do it. And so it wouldn't have taken very long, because dwarves are the tinkers in the first place.
Yep.
And then they had the support of all the other nations jumping in, or all the other people groups jumping in to help them create all of this stuff. And so it started with we need to protect people, and it became we own the shipping lanes, and so nobody can mess with us. But it would be essentially like if I wanted to start a navy and I got all this money together and I'm building a ship for the very first time. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to figure this out. And the USS Missouri rolls up on me, right? Like, this thing is specifically designed to level
ships.
mountains,
Yep.
right? And I'm working on a dinghy.
It has enough firepower to destroy an entire small city.
Right.
And you're...
Yeah. And so this is what you'd be up against. And so most people wouldn't even bother trying, because the dwarven shipping lanes and crossing passage, like you get on a dwarven boat, you know you're safe, you're getting across. And the Traders Guild regulates the prices anyway, so they can't take advantage of you with prices that way. And it's all a very reasonable thing. It feels less reasonable than it is, but 95% of the time, anybody who was like, I want to learn how to sail, would be like, it'd just be easier to give this dwarf 5 essence and I can get to Garthia.
And it's not uncommon for
not a big deal.
The dwarves to teach other like even though we call it dwarven pirates, you would never have a non-dwarven navigator just because of the nature of the navigation device. But the dwarves would not be opposed to teaching other sailors how to sail.
As long as they were
As long
under
as
their banner.
they, yep, as long as they're under the banner. So you would have not just the dwarves, you would also talking like a pirate crew that would also still have big bullmen, or like a minotaurs. You'd have humans, you'd have orcs, you'd have muskapert, you would have anybody and everybody. The races commingled.
Yeah, for sure.
Pre-affirmation, everyone was segregated in different their different cities and their different groups, and they didn't really intermingle very much, and it caused a lot of problems. Post-breaking and affirmation, they had to start working together, and it's created some really cool and unique situations for them. And that's why we call it the Dwarven Pirates, because yes, the hierarchy is still Dwarven. You need the Dwarven navigators, but it is a plethora of sailors aboard these ships behaving like some of them rowdy sailors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And as far, I think, I'm going to ask a question.
Actually, we're getting a bit off topic here. Last I checked, this episode's about Garthia, so...
Well, but
We can still feel
Yeah,
in all
we can
fairness,
still.
yeah, the Dwarven Pirates reside, like one of the cities in Garthia is the Dwarven Pirate home.
Yep. That's their home away from home when
Yeah.
they're not at sail.
So we're good. Whatever
All right,
questions,
then that ties
that's what
into
we're here
Dave
for.
B's question about the power structure of the Dwarven Pirates.
What's up, Dave?
Hey, Dave.
So I don't think we've actually...
Hey,
like,
did you get your sweatshirt?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to
Or
figure that.
shirt? No, you got the hoodie.
You got the hoodie.
Did you get your hoodie? It's supposed to be there.
I'm excited to see some pictures of that hoodie.
I know, right?
I want to see you rocking it.
So okay.
As far as the structure, we would have a Dwarven Admiral who would be effectively in charge of the entire Dwarven group, and it would be a series of, like, admirals who work in that, because ultimate authority, he would have his Admiral First Mate, their Admiral First Mate, and you'd have different admirals or different sections of the sea that all work together to keep the lanes safe, keep the ships together, and make sure that their people are behaving well. We call them pirates. We're not, like, they're not pirates in this connotation is not the same as like the Pirates of Caribbean. We're not talking like Jack Sparrow, Barbossa, that kind of stuff either. They are
They fly under one banner.
They fly under one banner. Yes, I'm glad to hear that the hoodie's been
Will
sick.
you send us a picture?
I'd love to see you rocking it.
So yeah, but militaristic.
Absolutely,
Pretty
like
militaristic.
very, very, very militaristic in structure. And we'll spend some time fleshing out the Dwarven pirates and how they operate. Because we'll do a special group for the Traders Guild. We'll do a special setup on the caravanners and the Dwarven pirates and the the religious sect. Oh goodness, we have a lot.
Oh boy.
You know, it's funny. 16 years ago when we started this, everything was like generic overview stuff.
Big picture.
Big picture.
Everything was
items.
big picture.
And it's like, okay, so what does that actually mean for the individual, and how does that work, and how does my life operate, and all that kind of stuff? And I was like, all right, I guess we're getting into it.
We're getting into it.
So yeah, we've been, and Kyle and I regularly talk on the phone hours at a time discussing this stuff. So we're not just like, I mean, we are making it up, but
we work really heavily to make sure that what we create makes sense, because that's very important. And I love this. We talked about this a little bit, and I'll get out of this for a minute. But I love that creating a world is effectively like you have to have a little bit of knowledge of human behavior, anthropology, topic like why they would do this kind of stuff. And so it's a lot of fun to really break down. Why, how? Let's fill this in.
yeah.
And
I feel like I want you guys to know, because this is a big deal for me. I want you guys to know, like, Kyle and I have always stood on the idea of we don't want to retcon ideas.
Nope.
And we have, as we're fleshing things out, but once it's canon, like once it goes on the podcast, it's canon. We've talked about it, we've written it down. And so it sounds like these are events that have happened, and we're pulling from information that is real because we wrote it down and we decided that it was canon, and we're not going to change it. And so we want it to be as robust of a story as possible. We said no to time travel.
no time travel.
Never, because
Ever.
we don't want to be able to retcon the story. Things happen, and when we're discussing things, if we make things canon and it's like that wasn't the best thing that could happen in that situation, what requires
have
us to do is to push forward using that, just like history does in real life. And so it's a whoops in history that now we have to compensate for moving forward. How do we deal with are really happening as we're developing this story? And so I felt like I needed to tell you guys, but I want you to know that we care like a lot about the robustness of the story and how it feels like if the world were legitimately like this, if the magic operated like this, these things could transpire this way for real.
Yep.
And so
When we build it with that idea that it's going to be a permanent fixture.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
yeah.
Just like in our Magic and the way we run the role-playing game, and we're building it, and it also helps to put the meat and the bones, the flesh and the tendons and the muscle, all of that onto the bones that we've created is building the role-playing game. And the role-playing game, one of our biggest things is if you create it, someone else can make it. Like it can be done by somebody else. So just because a creature can do this doesn't mean that you as a player can't figure out how to combine the things to make it happen.
Right.
So it's a lot of fun. When we keep thinking that in mind, it also makes balance a lot of fun and frustrating.
Okay. Back to Garthia.
Back to Garthia.
All right. Well, next with Garfield.
Not Garfield. This is not a ginormous
That's
catch.
not ours.
Nope.
No. Next with Garfield.
Garthia.
My bad.
Okay.
Zoom zoom.
Brain wee.
Brain gone. Bye bye.
All right. Next with Garthia.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yay.
Thanks, Ian.
So our man behind the chair definitely just gave us the pronunciation guide for Taylor. It was phenomenal.
Thank you. All right.
Fun fact, we don't have cats. Because they exist here, not in Savarion. So we would never have cats. We may have feline type creatures. We have cat-like people.
That's true.
So technically, we guess we do have
Yeah.
man-sized
cat-like-
orange
we have
cats.
cat-like creatures.
Ugh, I made a mistake.
Yep.
We do have
Oh,
giant.
well.
Oh well.
All right. Well,
All right, Taylor, what's your next question?
what are some really
Fine,
notable
Kugan.
cities?
Oh.
Inside of Garthia. Well, we have 20 cities inside of Garthia.
Yeah.
Do we want to start talking about them and see how far we get, or?
All right, because we're.
I mean, because I also have a few other questions if we want to get to the cities next time.
I'm good either
Yeah.
way. So whatever you want to do.
If you want to
All
field
right.
more questions about the cities, we can. If you have other questions, let's see where that goes first.
Is there an architecture? Is there a specific architecture style within Garthia?
Ooh, no, because each city would have a unique build structure. The walls would be modeled after the walls of Kungan. Kungan is like the gold standard for walls.
Yeah.
When it comes to siege warfare, you won't. Now, granted, the Garthian walls don't glow blue. That's kind of unfortunate. But we also have this cool situation where they would have the fall of the the first empire, the Big W. Why can't I remember the name of this empire? We built
Coalayan.
Coalayan Empire. They had dwarven technology, and the Coalayan refugees would have been able to take that dwarven knowledge from ancient times, and Garthia would have taken them in as refugees hungrily, kind of like everyone did after World War II.
No.
And they would have been able to fortify themselves with ancient dwarven technology. So we're talking walls with napalm throwers.
Yep.
Like they're able to reconstitute a lot of that lost Durzan tech.
And built with earth mages.
Yep.
That could move. And so you have earth mages that would walk the walls, top and bottom, and make sure that it was still in good, pristine condition constantly.
Absolutely.
Like if you went to a section of wall, the Garthian wall, which is 750 miles, the Garthian wall. So it's equally large on the water side, but there's not walls there. But the walled side in the land is 750 miles long, which is a lot of Han. So,
Because we have our
but yeah,
different-
it's that big. So you'd have your earth mages that were employed by the city itself walking the walls all the time, making sure that they were repaired and everything like that.
And so,
So
as far as the architecture you go, you have different cities and different build structures and different views. Now, when we have Affirma, we are talking they built the cathedrals grand and massive, and they wanted to make sure that the Affirma was the home that the Horakai needed it to be to showcase their greatness, to save the rest of the world. They didn't want any more decimations. But they also built massive spires, one for each brother. Now, Therinix stands higher than the others. The other three stand at the same height, but Therinix will always be taller because he is the head of the Horakai pantheon. And then they would, more Notre Dame, kind of that gothic glory and mass feel would be there. Stained glass windows, depicting the Horikai's victories. Just everything is massive in scale.
it's over the top.
Absolutely.
You know, it's that I want to make sure that they feel like we put everything into it that we could have.
The greatest craftsmen continue to feed and facilitate, and so you would have people who devote to religious depictions as an effort to, please don't kill me.
Please don't kill me.
Now, keeping in mind, the Horakai also made themselves some dragons, all right, and they call themselves the Heralds, and you make a mistake, the Heralds will come down and burn you alive, eat you, kill you, whatever they choose to do, however they choose to do it, because they kind of mimic the tenets of the individuals that created them. So the Horakai very rarely come down and go smite themselves anymore. They just let their big giant dragon monsters come and handle it. So it's a thing that's had to happen in the past where cities would disappear or be made an example of, and they would just send a herald down and be like, "Hey, you look a little peckish. Why don't you go eat that whole village?"
So, and then sorry.
Hello, DTV. Sorry, I was gonna do some greeting, but go ahead.
No, you're good.
Go,
You're,
yeah, hit the greetings.
Hey, DTV. There are Horakai in Garthia.
They don't reside in Garthia. So that was the Firma is where they made the pact, and that's where you like honor them, and so you build these grand temples to them. And yes, they would have like thrones for them to come sit on, but yeah, nah, they they are far too happy in their situation now. They don't come down.
Yeah.
They may send their heralds to honestly not just destroy, but also speak to the people and reaffirm their power and glory and
And
might.
they still do occasionally.
Very occasionally would they speak to
But,
someone directly. And yeah, I could see. I don't think we actually have an event. We honestly could add one where they came down in person. I guess the first year to confirm, like the first year after the affirmation, they
Well, and they
have
would have been there at the
there.
affirmation.
At the affirmation, they were there, and then they would have come down the year after in in power to make sure that there was being honored. Even
And
though,
then I imagine when the Pantheon was completed, they'd come down.
yeah, they would come
to
down
see-
and
to be part
constantly,
of it.
effectively give it their blessing.
Which the square that the Pantheon sits on, so that you have the 4 temples, and then there's a giant just square that is like a flat marbly kind of place, is literally 2 miles by 2 miles. Like that's the place where people gather to worship.
Just a massive worship hall and like feasting ground. So it's worship by day, worship by night, and then around it is like feasts and offerings to be received. And you're also receiving the blessings of the oh my gosh, the ecclesiarchs, not the ecclesiarchs. Oh, that's the wrong word.
The Vassal-arcs.
The Vassal-arcs, thank you. They're receiving the blessings of the Vassal-arcs, or they're paying their homage. Like people eventually, especially a lot of the layman people, worship them like they were gods for real. And there is doctrine that we get to flush out and share with you guys in a later date that we can have with that. That, if I'm not being honest, like it's mostly like mortal created doctrine that fits the design, like what they view the Horakai as. So it gets a little fun.
Oh boy, can't wait for the Horakai sermon.
The sermon of the Horror.
Zayok is by far my favorite. It's not a healthy favorite, but it's a favorite.
Oh boy.
We'll get there. But yeah, so as far as architecture goes, it's all going to be dependent on the city. Like we talked about, Affirma has that very high Gothic feel. Some of them would have more of that Roman open-ended feel depending on where they were at. And we don't really give them any, but it's more functional.
Yeah.
And as you go further, this is kind of cool actually. The further west you go in Garthia, the slummier it gets. West side is our poor side.
Yep. East side is a little more rich.
East side is the rich side. And that changes the architecture based on the need. So you're going to have more smaller homes and shacks kind of stacked on top of each other. That's where you start getting into more of your apartment style living structures when you head west. And then you got your wharf up. Your port cities are going to have a lot of different shenanigans going on there. And we'll break down each different city and kind of more what it provides to the rest of Garthia.
I guess probably next time.
Yeah, I think I have talked too much.
No, it's okay. No, this is good because we only get to do one live, so one live a week right now. So ask all your questions. I think we have a couple more, but I think I want to be able to field those today because for Thursday's episode we won't be fielding live questions. So
now we'll be monitoring it because it's going to be a premiere.
Right.
So definitely want you to check in, and if you have questions there, we can take them down and then answer them in the next live.
Yeah.
So don't hesitate to hop in on Thursday. Throw your questions down, and I can field what I can while I'm there because I'll be monitoring it.
But it won't be a live.
It won't be a live interaction quite the same.
So.
Yeah.
And if your question's like at the end of a live or something you've thought of after, we can before we start the recording the next, we can always note it down as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Drop the questions in the comments.
Yeah.
Hit us up on that. And obviously that whole like, comment, subscribe shenanigans as well. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
All y'all crazy followers out there listening to. Oh, we got a question.
I think we've missed a couple.
Not really, no.
Oh, okay.
Taylor's been on it. She's been crushing it.
Dave asks, what is the big divider between the city's race, industry, social, or wealth statuses and levels?
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. So race, not so much a thing.
Not anymore.
So post affirmation, race loses its value. There are obviously groups that are still like, I'm for my people. That's still going to happen in the world. But as a general rule, Do what?
We have Bayorn
Bayorn
Manchur.
the Manchur. As a Thanks, Tim. That's probably one of my favorite characters that has ever been brought to. I love that dude.
I mean, he was a racist Minotaur.
He was a racist Minotaur working on his redemption arc. That's great.
That was so good.
So race, except for certain sects, not a big deal. I mean, it was one member of each of the 9 races that set up the council that did the affirmation.
Yep.
And then they all started working together to figure out dwarves are better at tinkering, so they became the pirates. Like halflings, their divine purpose is to protect, so they became the caravanners.
But they took on all people. Yeah.
Right, they took on all people. So that was just their thing. So race, not as much. Industry is city by city.
Yep.
It's not like we have it like divided, like this is the trade district and this is the.
We do have the major trade district. It's actually in there. It's in our city of
Ruffin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ruffin.
But I mean, there's not like this area is like different trade things, and this is different farming things, and this is like we don't have it quite divided up that way. Like we have the main port city, and then you have like your head city, and then your guard tower, and then you have up over here is where they do some farming, down over here is where they do cattle herding, and then you have gemstones and
they're not cattle. We have a different type of creature that effectively
it is
replaces. Yeah,
it is cattle. It's not a cow.
No, not a cow.
Like we know them, but it is still a cattle.
It's a bovine herding process.
It's a herded creature that tastes good and tastes different depending on what it eats.
It is really fun. They're like a little bit of bees, but no wings.
Yeah. As far as social and wealth is concerned, the very center city is Refin.
Center city is Affirma.
Affirma.
Yeah.
And then you have due east is Refin. And then the very next city this way is called Paradise. We're considering, for those of you who know what it is, Floston as the name of that city. It hasn't been decided.
We've got to check some legal shenanigans to make sure it's a thing
we can legally use that, we will.
We're calling it Floston.
And for those of you who know, you know. So that'll be the Paradise City. And then you have Gemstone. And then you have the fishing stuff, which in Garthia, fishing is a rich man's thing.
Yep.
So the fishing port is actually a super wealthy port. So, but if you go the other way from Affirma, right, you have Gauche, which is like your research and news.
That's R&D.
And then you have your metallurgy, and then you have your pirate home, and then down below you have basically our version of like what Vegas would be.
It's called Vice.
It's called Vice. So
right on
it
the nose.
kind of
Bonk!
like if Affirma is the wealthiest city in the nation, as you go this way, it gets less so, but stays really wealthy. This side, it drops off real fast. And then north to south, it slowly digresses, but real slow.
Real slow.
Yeah. So,
your middle class is going to be like more to the southeast, and that kind of like in that swath.
Yeah.
That's where.
Northeast and southeast is going to be your upper middle class.
Yep, upper middle class, and then upper higher wealthier, and then it goes super wealthy in the center, and then the lower, and then
as you go west, you'll have your lower middle class and low class.
Yep.
And then your gamblers.
So that's kind of the distribution of wealth and function.
Because there's going to be a lot of wealth. A lot of poverty and a lot of wealth over there.
The city of Vice is home to Dave's Moo Moo Emporium. It's the best place to get your drug milk.
Get it there, Dave. I'm going to make it. Yep. I'm going to figure out a way to actually create this.
The Dave's Moo Moo. Oh my gosh. We probably could. I bet we could. I mean, we talked. That's a whole different story. We can talk about that in like one of the state of the.
All the things that are legal in Colorado, we probably could pull it off.
Yep.
So
call it wee milk.
No, we have to call it Dave's.
We call it
Moo Moo Milk.
We'll call it Dave's Moo Moo Milk from Dave's Moo Moo Emporium. We'll license it under Savarion.
New merch idea.
New merch.
Yes. Oh,
alcohol milk.
On that note, I'm working on the drop shipping so that people can start ordering merchandise. Ooh. I'm working on that.
Heck yeah.
Not in this moment, but like I'm actively.
It'll be
working
good.
on
We'll showcase some of the T-shirts that we have out there that we're looking at getting sold. You can buy your favorite leader. You can rep your favorite race. Which,
Yep.
if you haven't had the chance, our website, I think it's linked on the channel. There's a place where you can go and take the test to find out what race you fall under. I mean, I'm a dwarf. That's what I every time I take it,
Some
dwarven
got to.
supremacy.
I got elf.
I even built the orcs so that I would answer the orc questions and be an orc, and I ended up with a Zimgato. Well played, Jeff. Well played.
And I mean,
All right.
Corbin, as he talked about, he's a Minotaur. He's
a
taken it
Minotaur.
multiple times, and
Yep.
yep.
So,
And
so
Ian,
jump on.
our man
Take the
behind
test.
the chair, is also a dwarf. No.
I got elf.
Yep.
Yep.
Hat got elf. Little sing-songy, wood-loving, pointy
Okay.
ears, solid
Hey.
color eyes.
My wife is an elf too.
Yep.
So,
It's good stuff.
It's a lot of fun.
all right.
And yeah. Are we timed out? We have 9 minutes left.
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Sorry.
We
I
can
was
answer
like,
Dave's other question.
Dave asks, are the races still imbued with fulfilling a divine purpose or their divine purpose?
absolutely.
Yes.
It's adapted in a good way, actually, with this intermingling, because they're able to fulfill that divine purpose at an individual level, in a group level, and now where it gets interesting is when you have the commingling of races, and it's no longer frowned upon. This is a thing. This is when you start to get your half breeds and your quarter breeds and your shenanigans.
Ooh boy.
If you have two Archies who are the same family, they actually find sometimes they have to find a way to work together where one of them is in charge of certain aspects and then someone in charge of the other, because they're going to clash and try and fight for control. It's also kind of funny because you can have a half elf, half musketeer, half elf, half human, and then have a full elf child just because of the way that the genetics work in Savarion.
Right.
So you can be full-blooded elven with two half parents.
Hey, is that a grain reference?
Yes, it is actually a great reference.
Maybe.
Uh,
So,
so it's a lot of fun. But yes.
yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Well, so like we were saying with the evolution of the different groups, the pirates and the caravanners and the traders and all of those kinds of things, they're originally led by whoever of that race would be naturally inclined to have fulfilled their divine purpose for that. So the Farmers Union is actually established by Minotaur.
And Minotaur and Elf working together.
And
Yep.
yeah, the Minotaurs and the Elks, because they're about the natural production of the world. And so one of them is about what can the earth,
Yep.
what can I cultivate to create something? And the elves are more, how do I maintain the structure and beauty of it all? And so the combination of those two creates the Farmers Union. And that's how we get food, is from those two. And then Baraltheon is established by a human. So the city of the wise, literally the city that maintains the knowledge of all of the wisdom of all the ages past,
I'm so
is
excited.
a human.
I'm so excited to talk
So,
about Tiafa
and
when
that's,
we get there.
we need like a whole series on Tiafa.
Tiafa, so awesome. Her story, her origin story
Oh, man.
has just gotten so much more epic.
We're going to fly into Kungen for 2 seconds, but Tiafa has now become, we have reintroduced Tiafa into the greater story when we're talking about secret societies and all, and the different cities and how everything plays. We had to introduce a new way for somebody to engage in the world that Tiafa perfectly fills. She already is in that role. And so she's going to now be a major threat from the affirmation to the end of time, becomes this major player, like Duendelvin level major player.
Ooh.
In fact, more so.
Yeah, she
At,
ends up
at some point becomes even more.
playing the most pivotal role.
Yes. So we need, like, she needs her own book, basically. Like you could write a book about Tiafa, and yeah.
Listen, I gotta finish the Broken before I can start writing Tiafa.
I just said she will need her own book. So, and I think it's really, like, and then I'll be done flying in Kungen. I think it's really important to note that pre-affirmation, the most important human that you have pre-affirmation is Rymat. The most dynamic human that exists in the world at any point in time is the one who accomplished the maze 3 times. Never happened before, never happened again, right? Because it's destroyed so they can't. But is a male, right? And he leads the humans during the fall. And then post-affirmation, the most important human is a woman. right? And so that super supports our ideology that humans are neither,
Yep, they fit both. They
are
be,
neither archy.
Yep.
So it's whoever is the
pure
most qualified to
meritocracy.
lead will lead. And I think that very powerfully demonstrates that humans actually fit that role.
Yep.
So
And it was kind of fortuitous. It wasn't entirely orchestrated. And I will.
we want a Kenji
You know
book.
what? I can do a Kenji book. He is the
Do you
head.
want a Kenji book?
He is the head of the Shadows,
Shadows
Guild,
Guild.
during the Keepers, and
During
he
the
would
Keepers,
be
yeah.
a hero prior to his.
That's true.
Just like
Is he our most notable dwarf though?
I mean, he did play himself. He was up against one of the great, unfortunately,
True.
but
Onizu's a big deal.
Onizu is a big deal.
But Onizu will be part of a book.
Yep, Onizu's part of one of the series, but Kenji, I think, is one of our major Dwarven players before you get the Dwarven Admirals.
That's
which
true.
Haven't been named yet.
Right.
But we'll get to that point where the Dwarven
No,
Admirals
Kenji's
are...
not a goblin. Kenji's a dwarf.
Yep, Kenji is the dwarf. He is the head of the Keeper, or he was the head of the
Shadows Guild.
The Shadows Guild, and I think he led the Keepers.
No, a goblin led the
You're right,
Keepers.
the Goblin did lead the Keepers, but he was a part of the Keepers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Man, can't wait for the Savarion timeline books.
Oh my gosh.
In order.
The Savarion Omnibus.
Oh man.
Anyway, we done flying Kungan. Let's land
Yeah.
the ship.
Because Duendelvin won't get her own book because all of the books are Duendelvin.
Yes, every book
basically.
is Duendelvin.
Which is why the podcast is called
From Duendelvin.
So, yeah, it looks like we have 4 minutes left. So, do we have any more questions?
Yep, we'll field the questions as they come in because the next
And
one
then,
we'll
yeah,
start
we'll-
breaking down the cities.
The cities.
Yeah.
In the next one.
I guess while we're waiting for questions to pop in, we don't talk about post affirmation. We talked a little bit about how Arls were a thing and how we had to have these different cities these different groups and organizations had to form for the betterment of the world. This was a wild, terrifying, terrible. Savarion's already a very unforgiving world, but now you have the weather being inconsistent and uncontrollable. You no longer have the weather mages to stop that inconsistency and uncontrollability. You now have these undead monsters that just want to eat your essence and take your body parts. Constantly attacking and harassing groups of survivors, and the smaller of a group, the more easier to target, and you would all fall to the
Right.
Arls.
Well, and the gravity
and
wells.
And the gravity wells would start
So-
playing havoc in certain areas where the armies were decimated, so people would flock away from those zones.
Because the underworld occasionally
Pops up and says,
pop up
"Hello,"
through.
because our Immortulum need more flesh. They need flesh for flesh sculpting,
Yeah.
and mortals provide great access of flesh.
Yes.
Yep.
And Dark Souls would.
Dark Souls is a pretty applicable function, except you get to
Well,
be
I was going to
undead.
say Dark Souls would. Dark Souls would struggle in Savarion. I mean, when you start playing Savarion for the first time, if you play the board game, if you're in defense mode, you're rolling a d12 against a d20.
Yep.
Because if you're offense, you're a d20. So everybody's against everybody. Everybody's warring against everybody. You only get a d20 if you're aggressor.
Yep. Unless you're a guardian. which is
Unless you're a
special.
guardian, right? But the aggressors get that, and then the aggressors get your power.
Yep.
And so if you're not strong enough, then you fall to the wayside. But when you start playing the role-playing game, you get to roll a d4 for success, right? It's unforgiving. I mean, everybody rolling a d4, the failure count is so high.
Ooh.
So
Fun moments. Fun moments.
Filthy casual, and we got a question there, Mistake.
All right, Joe Schmo asks, how long have you worked on this?
So Ian, say hi real quick.
Hello.
So that's my son Ian. He is 15 and a half years old. My wife was pregnant with him when the idea of Savarion was birthed. So that's how long we have been working on this.
Yep. That was a good answer,
But yeah,
Dave. Yeah. it's
Pretty
been-
much 16 years, pretty close to 16 years.
Yep.
I don't remember the exact day that I was like, I'm going to create my own thing. I didn't think it was going to be this big of a deal in my life. I was like, I think I could beat this MMO. I think I could do better.
Yeah.
Like, it was just this idea that I started. I never thought it would become all of this.
That
But
is good to note. It started off with the idea of being a massive multiplayer online game
Yeah.
competitor to EverQuest,
no,
EverQuest
wow.
and WoW and World of Warcraft. Those
I
are
never
the two
played
major
EverQuest,
players. That's
but-
fair, but those are the two majors.
So, and
Damn,
I think I
motivation
like where
goes
it came.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So, but yeah, so something close
Hello,
to
Blob.
16 years because he's 15 and a half and she was pregnant with him when the idea was created. I was in Schweinfurt already, so
Right, and then I
something
came
like
on
16
board
years.
in Afghanistan.
Yep.
Yep.
So in 2011, Kyle came on board, and I birthed the idea in 2009. So
And we've been flushing out
Yeah.
ever since, aggressively, consistently.
yeah, for real.
Oh man,
I'm ready for it.
it's so good.
March
So,
4th,
March 4th, the Kickstarter goes live. We are doing a special live broadcast that day. It's
an hour after it launches.
Yep.
So
Well, we will have a lot of fun, and definitely pop in, hit us up on the Kickstarter as well. We'll have that.
Yeah.
If you go to the website, there's a countdown there. That countdown is to the Kickstarter launch date. So, and we're also on the
so
socials.
excited.
You can see our shenanigans on social media. We got beautiful pictures of one of our prototypes up there, how the pieces look, some really cool videos. We have an amazing intro video. I think it's pinned and tagged.
oh my goodness, it's our
Commercial. It's our
commercial.
Yeah, it's also it's so good. John, who was he's one of our other guys. He put that commercial together, and he did a phenomenal job.
Ian can play it.
Oh,
You want to end with that today?
We could.
Can you do
Special
that?
outro.
All right,
Special
so
outro
let's
today.
Ian, let me know when you're ready for that.
Alright.
We'll say goodbye, and then you can click on that. So we'll do that. So you guys watch the.
Oh, it's so good.
I love the commercial. I had like no
Oh,
part in
boy.
it. I just am like, I love this commercial.
I
It's
just
so
got
good.
to throw a bunch of words at John and say, "Here."
I think my part in it. I mean, I helped develop all the way too, but the video itself. I think my whole role in the video was, "That's dope. We should do it." So
Yeah,
but all right, Ian, you ready?
I think he's ready.
Cool.
All
All right, well,
right.
we'll say
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Bye,
And
everybody.
Thursday at 1, we'll do a premiere. So we'll have somebody sitting behind the computer to answer questions if you want it, but it will not be live. But we'll be back live next Tuesday, and we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.